Well, this is the Vanguard Podcast, and I'm Gavin.
And I'm Zac.
And we've just been joined by New York City Council member Carlos Menchaca, who is a candidate for the mayor of New York City. Welcome to the show, Carlos. How's it going?
Hey, Zac. Hey, Gavin. Buenas noches. So good to be here with all of you.
Yeah, so good to see you. And thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks so much for your time. Just to start off, could you give a little bit of an introduction to your candidacy for mayor and, tell people why you're running and what you would bring to the job that your fellow candidates for the mayor aren't bringing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a city council member and I represent a district in Southwest Brooklyn, District 38, which includes Sunset Park and Red Hook. So if you know our district, that's where we've been doing a lot of good work in the last 7 years. And we are going through some incredible and difficult times right now as a city that really, I think, elevated some issues that we had been working on in the district that are really felt citywide: development, policing, reimagining policing, and just like how to construct budgets. And all these things are really what's motivating me in really stepping in and bringing issues and talking about issues in a way that none of the candidates have done and won't do. And there's a difference between talking about it, and I call it progressive speak, and actually being able to implement it with courage. And I feel like in my time in the city council, I've really confronted not just the mayor, but also my colleagues in figuring out how to do things differently. And so we had this big rezoning situation that happened. That was a 7-year kind of in the making situation where Industry City, a big rezoning, we defeated because the community came together and really offered a new way, a new vision about how our relationship with government and developers just wasn't working. So I'm here to challenge the status quo. I'm here to bring new ideas and really with the courage to transform government in the way that we need it.
Yeah, well, I think that's absolutely exactly what we need. We need people who are, courageous enough to challenge the status quo, because this not only is the status quo not working, it's hurting so many people, right? And one of the best places to challenge the status quo, and like you framed it, I think so perfectly, reimagining how we police, and you followed it up by talking about the budget. And I think it's so important that we do that immediately, specifically in your instance, as the mayor has so much pull in deciding how the New York City budget is going to be allocated. And under Mayor Bill de Blasio, just like every other mayor, it's been wildly misallocated in the view of many progressives such as myself and Gavin. I'm wondering what kind of steps that you would take to make the rein in the budget of the NYPD, rein in the NYPD, completely full stop. I think the people of New York City have been overwhelmingly clear, taking to the streets, demanding a defunding of their police department. And I think a great place to start this conversation would be, how do you think we can go about that if you're elected mayor?
So in a lot of ways, I've been thinking about this since last summer, when the marches that were happening across the city were all really energized around this concept of budget justice and defunding the NYPD. And I think the city council in so many ways failed to take that energy and make it what it should be: a people's house, a place for the people's voice to make policy. And we failed. I voted no on the budget. And this was after, I think, a lot of negotiations. We were really close, I have to say, to building our own budget. The city council has the power to pass its own budget, separate and apart from the mayor. In this system right now, the mayor has a lot of power to propose a budget that we react to, and then we go into negotiations. In the middle of these negotiations, the budget was slammed with a decrease of $10 billion. Now that's the kind of world economic depression that we're in right now. And it didn't give us enough time, I think, to organize. I want to change that. This next year, I want to build something called the people's budget. Is exactly what I just kind of framed it as: the power of the council to actually build our own budget, but not 6 weeks into 6 weeks right before the budget vote, 6 months. And so really next month, what I want to start doing is gathering council candidates and gathering people that are part of the movement to start building our own budget that we get to push through the city council. That's, I think, how we start the conversation in a different way. We started at the council side. That will allow us to actually defund the NYPD and then show to people where we want to put it. Education, healthcare, housing. There's so many places I think that we can actually benefit from a decrease of up to $3 billion. But people have to see it. I think that's the one thing that I think is missing here, to actually see a new budget. And then what we can do is really confront these issues that not an issue, but the idea that we can actually start creating non-police solutions to public safety. And that's what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to these big foundational solutions to, these problems that we're talking about addressing, such as income inequality, another bold solution that's been proposed that I heard you briefly mention on another show you were on is the concept of universal basic income, which has been widely popularized as of late. And I'm personally hoping that the next mayor of New York City is able to kind of lead the way on this front and would try to get a UBI implemented for the citizens of New York City. I think it would certainly be a game changer and could be a nation-leading policy. Would you attempt to implement something like a guaranteed income for the citizens of New York City? And how would that work as mayor? Like, how would you be able to get something like that accomplished?
I'm super excited about universal basic income, and it's something that a few of us in the council have gotten excited about, talked about. We are trying to figure out how to make that work. And there are a lot of mechanisms that we've actually created that will mimic this kind of support for people. And there's 2 or 3 things that I want to make sure are kind of set in this program. One is that every New Yorker should have access to this program. And I'm talking about immigrants, undocumented immigrants. And so that becomes a little bit, we have to work a little bit harder when that happens. We can do that with city tax money. And we've done it in other programs like the identification card, ID NYC. I don't know if either of you have it in your wallet, but you also.
We're both based out of Kansas City, actually. So we're not New Yorkers.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Well, ID NYC is this incredible program for New Yorkers that New Yorkers can take on, and anybody, no matter your immigration status, can have a government issued ID. And that's good for so many things like police. Many times you get caught up in the criminal justice system. And so we created every program like this is for everybody. Universal basic income has to be the next one. And then the other thing that we did recently was a program called Fair Fares. And I don't know if you've heard about that. In New York, we wanted to ensure that people have
public transportation,
half price Metro cards.
Yeah.
And that's something that we created and designed for everyone, no matter what immigration status you had. And so this is all kind of in the making towards it. So that's how we're gonna do it. And as mayor, what I want to do, and even before mayor, this is why building our own budget is going to be important, because what we want to do is actually do it now. I don't want to wait to 2022. I want to use the power that I have in the council to implement ideas, bringing a grassroots effort to really push this current council to do the right thing. And I want to be able to display my mayoral vision now. And I'm going to do everything I can to make that happen.
Yeah, well, it's certainly needed. And I think you touched on a really important point that I wanted to get into, was when you talked about when we provide relief at scale, especially in a place like New York City, which does have such a diverse population, you need to be considering solutions that are, taking into mind people of all, immigration statuses, of all, housing situations. And when we're looking at the, particularly the housing situation in New York City, I'm sure these numbers have gotten worse, but at one point it was something like 30% of renters were unable to, were months behind on rent, facing massive eviction. As soon as any kind of government prevention and evictions are allowed to begin again, there's going to be just a horrifying and devastating kind of houselessness crisis unfolding in New York City, the likes of which we haven't seen since the Great Depression. I'm wondering what kind of solutions that you're thinking of, both as a city council person now and as a future mayor. How do we work to resolve that for all people of New York?
Yeah, this is one of those categories that has a lot of ideas. I want to share with you some of the things that are exciting and really out of the box. One is I want to start thinking about municipalizing apartments. What does that mean? There are thousands of apartments right now in the city of New York that are empty, and they're empty for a lot of different reasons. I want to be able to figure out how the city can either create a program or to really kind of force a situation where they would have to, whomever is holding it, maybe an international company or whatever, to offer it into a city program that would allow for a family to move in.
Yeah, if you look at like Manhattan numbers on the who's registered to vote at the lofts and skylines that make up the $100 million lofts or whatever, I mean, it's nobody.
Exactly. And that's across, and that now includes so much housing that was built in the last 7 to 10 years with Bloomberg and now de Blasio, where these units are just waiting for this economy, this kind of market response that isn't working. And so that's one that I want to tackle. I'm going to need a lot of legal support to really build that out, but I think we can get somewhere. And even if it's a percentage, we can really show the power of that to solve the crisis that we're seeing. Two is really change the way that we think about building affordable housing. There's so much housing that's getting built that's just market driven with a little bit of requirement for affordable housing, but it's so small. I want to build 100% affordable forever. And those are two projects in my district in Sunset Park that are models, and really looking to our nonprofit developers that can actually build 100% affordable with a lot of tax incentive and capital investment. But that's what the cities need to do right now. And what we're not utilizing right now is our borrowing power. The city of New York is at its best rating right now to borrow money, to construct. And now we're talking about like affordable housing, but we can also be talking about the Green New Deal municipal version. What can we do, and not even wait for the federal government to take this on, and really show that the federal government can come in after. We don't need them to lead. We can actually do it. We have so much financial power to actually make something happen that will generate jobs and jumpstart our economy. And so anyway, I have a lot of other economy conversations.
Yeah, well, let's stay on that a little bit. Could you talk about the Green New Deal being implemented at a municipal level? I just imagine that with Joe Biden at the wheel, we're not going to get anything that's up to par for what we need anyway. So obviously it would be valuable to get started at a local level, especially in a city like New York City, which, like you mentioned, has tremendous economic power, but also just has the media is going to have eyeballs on it, like we mentioned with UBI. If something gets started in New York City, especially something successful, the nation's going to be forced to replicate that
in other cities that might not have the kind of robust nature, but and also won't be able to experiment the way we can. This is a city, I think, that needs to experiment with all these ideas that have yet to make it into fruition. UBI, and I think there's a lot of ways you can sketch kind of create that. But with the economy, what I see as a backbone to the economy right now is the immigrant economy. The backbone of New York City's economy is an immigrant economy. We have a few pieces of legislation that are waiting to get passed to support street vending in a bigger way. There are immigrants right now that are not permitted. They are essentially illegal and outside the system that are vending right now. And when we're thinking about COVID, where that's the safest thing you can do is to sell outside. The city has yet to release thousands of new permits. That's tax revenue we can be bringing into the city. That's an example of this essential work that is happening in cities where immigrants are putting themselves out in front, getting sick, dying at larger numbers, not having access to healthcare, where we can actually enfranchise them into the system. Street vendors, worker cooperatives. Worker cooperatives are a beautiful way for immigrants to come in without having status, because they can use their EIN number to be part of the business and be a business owner. and worker cooperatives are just better, I think, at really confronting the capitalist mentality of wealth generation for one person, and instead everybody makes it. And so those are the kind of things that I want to really offer for New Yorkers, especially when over 40% of the population are non-English speakers at home and are working right now on the front lines. Construction is a big place for immigrants that are working right now outside of the unions, and because I imagine that with this massive capital program that I'm talking about, the Green New Deal, where we can actually fund the transition into better infrastructure across the city, we're going to need a lot more workers. And that's where we can really bring in the immigrant community as well. And then you start solving housing issues because people have a job and people can pay for it and they're good wages. That's part of the Green New Deal. And all of that is without even asking the federal government to come in. We can really do that as a city of New York.
Well, it seems like New York City has had some successes for progressive candidates lately. Obviously, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Jamal Bowman have, gone to Washington, D.C. from New York City. And there's also been a handful of socialists elected to the state legislature, including several of which we've had on this podcast, had really good conversations with them. And I was just wondering, are you planning on capitalizing the same kind of progressive groundswell of support and activism behind your candidacy? And are you hoping to earn the endorsements of groups like the New York City DSA or the Working Families Party, which could help propel you to success like they have other candidates?
So yes, and in some ways, I don't want to win this without them. I think that this race has to really show the coalition that needs to come together, that includes the Working Families Party. I don't know if the DSA is going to endorse in the mayoral. I think they're really focused on a legislative agenda, and I think this is a kind of national trend for the DSA. But it doesn't mean that we can't share ideas. And so I want to really build with them. And we're doing that right now around zoning. They saw the work that we did around Industry City, this massive development on the waterfront that was bringing luxury retail and hotels that were out of context to this working waterfront. And we defeated it. And I think that this is power that we're kind of lending. And so you're right. This is going to have to include all that energy. And what we saw in New York in almost a year ago was this trend that removed a lot of incumbents in the state races. And so a lot of sleepy Democrats lost their seats and injected a DSA movement of candidates into the next legislative body. And so what does that mean? I think this is a perfect opportunity to keep going and installing someone like myself who's going to connect with them at the mayoral level. And the power of the mayoral administration is massive. And I've been seeing that power by confronting it and standing in front of it and saying no to that. And I think it could be really powerful. So having a kind of left DSA style mayor will also, I think, set us up for taking over the governor's office down the line. And now you have a whole different state pumping out ideas and projects that can go across the country.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned earlier your criticism or opposition to the current mayor, Bill de Blasio. Can you just further contrast the way you would govern as mayor with de Blasio, and also maybe go into Cuomo a little bit, and just the way you think he's...
Or their continuous pissing contest instead of helping the people of New York.
Yeah, exactly. And just the inadequacy of the pandemic response in particular. Before we got on the podcast, you were talking a little bit about the relationship between government and public health and such.
Yeah, I think that both of these guys, de Blasio and Cuomo, have really offered a very kind of old school style of politics, very top down, and not at all engaging communities about the future of their neighborhood, about development, about even healthcare and the response to COVID. You've seen that with the start and stop with the schools. Are they closed? Are they open? last minute decisions. And all that tells me is that there's a small group of people making decisions that are not connected to the ground. My mayoral administration will be how I do work right now as a city council member. I really believe in the power of participatory democracy. I really believe in people having critical information about how things impact them, from zoning to citing new schools and where to spend money. And I think that has just been lacking in both these administrations. And what I was talking about earlier is when international folks look at the United States, like some friends in Australia, and they look at how we're just not following direction, very simple science-based direction about COVID. It's because the communities don't trust government. And we have three reasons in New York: the president, the governor, and the mayor. And when, as a council member on the ground, I'm trying to engage people, I have to break through that distrust and build new trust. And oftentimes that's in other languages. A lot of times information isn't even translated into the language that people speak. And so the message doesn't even get there. These are all things that are going to change because we can do that. We can invest time and effort into building relationships that are real, that if we get into crisis, we can communicate a message that they will listen to, understand, and respond. And I think that's the power of a good public health policy, is trust. And you even saw that with the census. I don't know if you've been looking at the census that was confronted with COVID. We barely made 2010 numbers in New York City as far as response rates. And that took effort. That took $40 million of effort. And that's because people don't trust government.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing that we can have right now. And I want to rebuild that.
Yeah. Well, I imagine, are you planning on running as a Democrat, Carlos? Is that?
Yes. So I will be seeking both the Democrat and the Working Families Party line for.
Yeah, the reason I ask is just because I think we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss the absolute power of the Democratic Party machine, not just in the state of New York, but in New York City specifically. I mean, this is particularly the mayor race, but other races too. It's been a race that's been auctioned off to the highest bidder, right? And you can see that kind of by who's occupied the office. We can go back to Mike Bloomberg. Bill de Blasio was no stranger to fundraising. Obviously, despite all of his, phony progressive rhetoric, giving that endorsement to Bernie Sanders. Whenever it came to actual boots on the ground policy, he was always with the establishment, always with corporations, and that's kind of what they look for in a New York City mayor, somebody who can kind of talk the progressive talk, get these people out to vote. But at the end of the day, they're going to be pro Wall Street. So I'm wondering, what's your strategy for kind of getting around this essentially money race and obviously, there's limitations to that. I'm wondering if you think that the ranked choice voting is going to play any role in that, and if you're excited to see that dynamic.
So we want to build something very different than any other campaign, and that's the grassroots movement. We're not taking dollars from corporate PACs or developers, and so we're making that very clear. And people can go on our website right now, carlos2021.com.
Link in the description.
And and get connected through donations that can help fuel this campaign. I think that the other part is really kind of showing the work that we've been doing already in the council to say no to jails. I don't know if you heard about the 4 new jails that are on their way to 4 new jails that are on their way to the city council or to the city of New York that are to the tune of $9 billion. I voted no on those. As mayor, I want to talk about how we can take those dollars and ask the city of New York to imagine a new. The real project here is to really stitch together a coalition that wants to see this massive leap away from status quo, that we can start ushering in a whole new government. And I think that the Democratic Party has been so embedded with developers and really kind of corporations that have not just helped them get elected, that are keeping them elected. And I'm thinking about Cuomo and how he does his fundraising.
Yeah.
But we've also known that money only goes so far, that we can actually confront all of this in this moment in 2021, because we're not only going to get a new mayor, we're going to get a new controller, and a majority of the city council is about to flip. And this is why the DSA is really interested in building out a caucus in the city council to start shifting this conversation, so that someone like myself who feels often alone in the city council will no longer be, and we can actually build political power to start shifting not just legislation, but you're going to need a mayor to really mirror that energy in the city council, which has not been happening in the last 7 years with this mayor. And so you need both. And that's what the real message is to people that are engaged. And that's why we need everybody's low dollar donors in New York City to come in, and from around the world, or the United States anyway, to support this. I think the national conversation needs to look at 2021 in New York and say, if we're going to want things to change in other cities, we can start with New York. New York has the capital to be able to start coming up with new ideas. This is where the laboratory for this next version of America can come from New York City. And that's what makes me really excited about coming in like this.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a great plan. And I like that you mentioned the kind of fusion of the city council bench with the hopefully progressive mayor as well. We were just talking with Tiffany Caban, who's hopefully going to be elected to that city council, hopefully to help fulfill some of these policy visions. My last question for you, Carlos, is just obviously you're going to be up against so much money, so much corporate cash in this race. A lot of, I'm sure, really rich billionaires are trying to get this position to, fulfill their ambitions of later becoming president or whatever. It seems like, we just had Bill de Blasio and Michael Bloomberg run for president in the same election cycle. Well, one of them was still the mayor of New York
Mark
City.
Cuban and Mark Zuckerberg are both going to buy houses in New York City so that they can run for mayor.
Yeah, exactly. So my question is just, especially in a pandemic when you can't really knock on doors as much as usual, what exactly is your strategy to overcome this money deficit and media deficit you'll be up against? And what's your strategy to make some noise, get some headlines, force the media to cover you and win this race?
It's a lot of things that we're going to throw at this. One is we have a matching funds program. So New Yorkers get matched 8-1. And when I raise the first $250,000, that turns into $2,250,000. And that gives us an opportunity to have a full campaign that we can run that will be competitive. And we're inching towards that now. So that's one. Matching funds is going to give me the opportunity to speak to a lot of New Yorkers.
And yeah, just out of curiosity, how does that matching funds work? If you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, so this is a program that is available to anyone who's running for office, city council members, and the mayor. And if you raise a certain threshold, and it's different for council members, you get activated into the matching funds program.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's a good way for
And so New Yorkers' dollars get matched 8-1. So if a New Yorker gives me $10, it turns into $90, up to $250. And so that's going to allow me to quickly get to a point where I'm going to be able to be competitive. So that's one. The money issue is goes away quickly when enough people come on board. Second is I'm a city council member right now. I have a bully pulpit that I'm going to use to really activate certain issues that people can get involved in now. I think campaigns often feel like there's this amorphous thing, it's just vision. Well, let's get going. Let's do some stuff now. And this is when we talked about the budget. There's some rezonings that we're trying to defeat. Now the industry city failed to gain traction. We're trying to bring that to other rezonings across the city. This is where Tiffany Caban and I were at one in Flushing, New York. And so there's a movement that has action that I want to really demonstrate now. And then really the final thing is making sure that we bring all the energy of the youth of the city and people who are invested in things like the Green New Deal that can get involved with people power. And we're gonna need tons of volunteers. This is why I'm hoping people can sign up on carlos2021.com so that we can get your name and number and get you to help either making calls or literally going out. We're going to need petition help to get people to sign a piece of paper so that we can get on the ballot. And I think once all that comes together, it's going to be really hard not to listen to our work and see it in motion. And that's what makes me, I don't know, this is what makes me so excited about this race and how different we're going to be from every other campaign.
Well, Carlos, it sounds like you're bringing a lot of ideas that, we certainly at the Vanguard are 100% behind. And, it seems like from the activist energy, the people of New York City are ripe to get behind as well. And we certainly wish you the best of luck in your race. For anybody that's tuning in, please find the link to Carlos's website down below and contribute to his campaign in any way that you can. Like I said, we're based out of Kansas City, so we get hopefully some out of towners to contribute a couple bucks if you can. This is an important race, and we had a great time chatting with you.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach and Gavin, and to the Vanguard.
Yeah, thanks so much,
See you
Carlos.
soon. I'll see you again.
Yeah, look forward to speaking to you again, and good luck with your race.
Thank you.
Good night, man.